Morning, everyone. Welcome to this presentation on the Cepi statistics. We are very happy to show you the 2020 key statistics. As always, this time of the year, it's ready to explain what was the performance of the sector the year before. Today it's Bernard Lombard here in the middle, who's our Trade and Industrial Policy Director and then also in charge of the statistics work in Cepi, and Ulrich Debele on the left side, our Raw Materials Director that will in particular focus on recycling performance, and I'm happy to open the meeting for you. I'm Jari Ringman, Director General of Cepi. For those who may not know Cepi, it's a European association representing in Brussels 495 pulp, paper and board producing companies. They run 894 mills across Europe, and we employ directly 180,000 people, but of course indirectly many more. We are responsible and then proud of having manufactured in Europe 22% of the global production in our sector. We are, of course, famous for working across the value chain because, in particular in the circular economy, circularity is not possible without collaboration in the value chain, and Cepi is a key driver for that. And, of course, also upstream, we work with forest owners, and then downstream with converters, and then all the various value chains that we are involved with, actually increasing the value because the industry is very rapidly diversifying our production. And not only that, we are, of course, in the focal point of being the bioeconomy, circular economy, and digital economy. There are many other sectors that are one or the other or the third one, but I don't think there is many others that are in the focal point of all these three key economies. In the presentation today by my colleagues, the four key themes are that what was the impact of the COVID crisis, first of all? That's something that has impacted all the industries, all the economy, all the people, of course. And in our sector, we can clearly see that it has accelerated some underlying long-term trends, both negative and positive. Second key theme is that we see that our export performance has been record strong. And that's, of course, important also in this COVID context of recovery, because it's generating income and revenues to the society for the recovery. The third topic is, of course, how it looks for the future, and we can actually look confidently to the future because the outlook for the economy is, at least currently, very positive for the months to come. The fourth theme is our sustainability performance. And there we can proudly announce that we are really, amongst the industries, the sustainability champions. First of all, one reason for that is intrinsic in the sector, because our value chain is integrated and symbiotic. This means that the sourcing of the fibers is done in a very sustainable way. Already 2/3 of our fiber input is already circular economy based. 56% is recycled fibers of our input for production. 11% is residues from other forest-based sectors, like sawmill dust or chips. Then the remaining 1/3 is, of course, following nature's own cycles, and a big part of that, 22% of our fibers, is residues or materials from forest management. We call it pulp wood in the sector. And then 11% is round. And this is probably fantastic sustainability performance for sourcing our fibers. And then, of course, we see that still the recycled content and the circular content is increasing. And we believe that if there's this big boom for construction with wood, then the residues from sawmills also might become more available in the future. But not only that, we will come back to more in detail, but already giving you the sneak preview on the performance in recycling. So almost 74% of paper and board that is consumed in Europe is recycled back to production. And this again is amazing performance. Also, we are very proud to announce that 62.2% of our primary energy is renewable, and then there we are clearly, apart from all the other industries, we are really leading amongst the industries in having renewable energy used in our production. This has been, of course, thanks to heavy investments in the sector. So it's not given, it's because it has been planned for, it's been invested in time, and we still see new investments in this area happening. Further investments, of course, have increased the energy efficiency in the sector, and we not so long ago, a few weeks ago, announced the Reinvest 2050 project, where we every 2 years give you examples of real cases of investments to energy efficiency and climate change mitigation. So have a look at that if you didn't see it earlier. But it gives the examples of how we reach this fantastic performance. But again, last year we reduced the absolute CO2 emissions by 7.1%, and then also the specific emissions were, if I remember correctly, are in the range of over 3%, which is not too bad at all. So with all this, we are really the champions amongst the sectors. And like I mentioned, we have really hit record in exports of market pulp, paper and board production. So 26% of our production goes to export markets. And then in the recovery, where the European economy was really fragile for the COVID crisis, this is generating revenue to the society from export income, which is really valuable in this time. With this, I'm happy to hand over to my colleague Bernard, and he will run through the details in the presentation.
Thank you, Jori. Good morning, everybody. So let's now go to the statistics. So that's the 2020 statistics. And like every year, we update these data, and the reports are, I think, online by now. So you can get all the details. There is a key statistics, which is a smaller booklet with all the key figures. And then there is more, let's say, much longer version with all the data. Maybe just a short introduction, because over the years, I mean, Cepi has developed a robust set of statistics on the industry, but also on the markets. And you might say, okay, why is it so? Why do we have put so much effort in these statistics? And here is the raison d'être. I think it's, if you want to advocate for the industry, if you want to communicate on the industry, you need to have hard facts and robust data, science-based data. And you know, we are more and more asked for very good, high-quality data to help legislator to design policy and directive regulation and so on. And of course, we are also asked more and more data about the sustainability of the industry. And we need to come with all kind of data in all kind of sectors. And that's why we are pushing so much on our statistics. We have also to monitor our market develop. It's quite relevant also when there are some trade cases. And we also are there to, let's say, support the industry, the companies in their strategy when considering investments, making decisions and so on. So that's, I think, quite good reasons why we have been really pushing for the statistics to be even better and better, and we will go ahead, of course. Now, having data is one thing, having good data, reliable data is another one. And you know, we collect this data from the company through national associations. We have 18 national associations in 18 countries, European countries. And when we need, we complement this with external sources, Eurostat, and so on. And we work according to strategy. And as you see, we have, let's say, finalized and completed the one you see on the screen here. And we are working on a new one, defining a new one. What is also very important for us is to have a check of our statistics, because you might say, hey, that's a mistake, it's great, but how can we secure that these figures are properly collected and managed? And that's why we have an auditing body, today it's Deloitte, that is looking at all the data, but also the recycling related data. And of course, we, from time to time, have a check with regard to the compliance with the EU competition rules. And that's something we have a lot of attention to. So you see, I mean, there is a lot of data that's also available on our website for subscription. You have the link over there. So now, what about 2020? So it's not a surprise. I mean, our sector has been impacted by the COVID crisis, and it started with, of course, paper and board consumption, which went down by a bit more than 5% last year. And the economic recession, of course, has hit our sector like many others. And it reflects, I think, quite well the development we have seen for the EU GDP and Euro area GDP. You see -6%, -6.5%. And so it's quite logical to see that production also has decreased around 4.8% in 2020. But what is very interesting, and I think we are very proud of this, is that despite the difficulties and the slowing down of the economy, the sanitary restrictions, I mean, the mills were able to run without major disruption. And that's quite an achievement, I think. When you look at the global situation, I mean, this -4.8%, I mean, echo this -5% we have seen for the global paper and board production. That's according to our first estimates. Well, pulp production, pulp consumption has also been impacted. The interesting thing is that market pulp output remained relatively unchanged. So here you see how, let's say, with this chart, how the things have developed over the years. And it's interesting to see that there has been a major drop during the second, third quarter of 2020, and then step by step things have moved up again. If you look at the various or the big families for paper and board, you will see on the right end that graphic papers, it's not a surprise. I mean, the production fell by 19%. And well, if you think about publishers, offices, the commercial printing, and so on, I mean, there's been a huge decline for the reasons we know. On the other hand, packaging paper and board has been doing quite well, +2%. And here, I think we will all acknowledge that e-commerce has been providing a major boost. Sanitary and household grades, so hygiene papers, they also increased by 3%. But here there was, let's say, different developments because, for example, away from home markets suffered quite a lot because of the restrictions. So this +3% is, I think, quite significant. Specialty paper and board has been relatively stable. At the bottom, you see already a first indication about the first 4 months of this year. It's +1%. But keep in mind that the first 3 months, I mean, last year was not severely impacted by COVID yet. So it's really April 2020, which was a very tough month. I just wanted here to say a few words about specialty paper and board because, I mean, often we get questioned, what is specialty paper and board? And we have been focusing on this over the last couple of years. And with the support of some consultants like Alexander Watson Associates, and I think it's fair to also name them. You know, this specialty paper and board, they exhibit special performance or special characteristics. It's about physical properties, optical properties, chemical properties, electrical, and so on and so on. It's relatively complex markets, and actually you can find them under a bit graphic paper, under carton board, under the wrapping paper family. So it's a bit everywhere, which makes the exercise a bit more difficult. And you see the main categories for specialty paper and board. It's divided into different categories: packaging and labeling, 40%, building and construction, 18%, food service, 8%, and so on and so on. So you have, let's say, a myriad of markets. Packaging and labeling has been doing quite well, for instance, last year, +3%, building construction, +1.9%. So I think it was quite interesting to share with you this data, because that's really an area where we try to better understand what is going on, to extend, and the industry is investing into this specialty paper with added value. Okay, we talked about 2020 for paper and board. If you look at the first months of 2021, you have here a few figures. So you see that in a cumulative way, graphic paper, it remains quite difficult, -8%. Packaging, +6.6%. So all in all, paper and board is +1% after 4 months. Once again, let's keep in mind that the first 3 months, the first quarter of 2020 was still relatively good. So it's only with the coming months that we will see the difference between 21 and 2020. Market pulp. So all in all, I mean, the output remained quite unchanged in 2020. And I must say that here the exports have been quite dynamic. So you see figures about the total output for pulp, integrated market pulp. Here it was a decrease of 4.7%. Market pulp remained relatively unchanged, but exports, as I said, grew by 2.8%. So it's quite a positive development here. 4 months, first of all, 0.5%, so it's relatively stable, but anyway on the positive side, which is rather a good signal. As you already said, I think it's quite remarkable because in this difficult time, the industry has been delivering on its not only its competitiveness and its sustainability agenda. And once again, I mean, it's about providing essential products, especially in the area of packaging and hygiene. So I don't want to be too long on this slide, but you see a few figures. You already mentioned before the high recycling rate, which is very close to our target, 74%. And then a few figures about the emissions that went down last year, and I will show a bit more figures here. And also these quite amazing figures about energy production based on bio-based and biomass. Okay, that's just an illustration. Okay, here you see 2019. There is always a delay to get the final and latest data. It's quite remarkable that to see this decoupling. And I will show you in a second also figures for 2020 for emissions. So we don't have everything updated at the same time, so it comes to Cepi step by step gradually over the months. So now if I focus on emissions, as you already said, I mean, the direct emissions declined by 71%. And of course, I mean, the crisis has been there, no surprise about this. But remember, I mean, the paper and pulp production decreased by 4.8%. Market pulp was more or less stable. But specifically, if you look at specific figures, what is very interesting is that it has decreased by 3%, 3.1%. So it's quite an achievement. So it means really that our investments are continuing despite the difficult times and that we deliver on this emission reduction objective. But that's for me, and then I will leave the floor to my colleague Ulrich. That's the figures about the share of the fuel consumption that is based on biomass use. And you see, I mean, we achieved 62%. So the last figures we have is 2019. Last year we had only 2018. We were at below 62%. And if you think about the situation in 2010, we were at 53%. In 2000, we were at 49%. So it's really increasing gradually, and I think we are not there yet. We will see this proportion increasing further. So I leave the floor to Ulrich. Please, Ulrich.
Thanks, Bernard. Good morning. I will cover those parts that are related to the paper industry's raw materials consumption and recycling. And here we work since a long time with a whole value chain of associations that are involved in the collection, sorting, recycling of papers, but also about working on the recyclability together. And we have a long tradition of commitments to increase the recycling rate. And the last one was declared 5 years ago to reach 74% by 2020, and that seemed quite an ambitious goal. But we see here now with the outcome of the statistics that we have achieved that goal by 0.1%. So 73.9% of all the papers that were consumed in Europe in 2020 were recycled, and this means being back in the paper industry for making new paper and board, and that consumption includes also all papers that are not recyclable, or that cannot come back, cannot be collected, cannot be recycled, like for example some hygiene papers, or think of wallpapers, etc. So the theoretical potential is not 100% there. I think that is something we need to keep in mind, so to really value that high number. So these 74% means that this is encouraging us really to look where we can still achieve some potentials. 74 looks maybe a little bit theoretical as well, so that we translated this into a number of loops that every paper does on average in 1 year. In 2020, every paper did 3.8 loops on an average, being back into the use. That is what this recycling rate translates into. And the reasons and then the developments there last year, COVID also had an impact on the one hand. So less paper and board was consumed, as Bernard explained before. Mainly also graphic papers, because much more was in the online domain, and therefore also less was then available to collection. But on the other hand, the COVID crisis also showed the strong need for keeping the cycle going. And because the utilization in the European mills actually continued to be relatively strong. There was also a mean minus overall, but relatively small one, with only -2% of that utilization of used paper. On the other hand, exports decreased, overall, and also within those countries that are buying paper for recycling from Europe, there is really also a big change, as Chinese paper are not anymore the main export market, and other countries are importing more than they, like India, Indonesia, and also Turkey. We have a whole report about the performance, about all the numbers, but also about what all the associations organized here have contributed in terms of recycling, collection, and recyclability, eco-design in a report on this declaration and how we perform. That is available, as you can see here, on the EPRC website, and also on the Cepi website, available for download. Yeah, we mentioned it a bit before, so that utilization in Europe continued to be very strong. And if we look at our production, we see that the share of the paper for recycling that is utilized there has further increased to reach 56% in 2020. The rest, 44%, being covered with virgin fiber to keep this circular loop in the paper industry going. That is in that utilization is very different in different grades, and that is also where the paper for recycling is utilized, where it's most efficient to utilize it, and where it's also possible from a legislative part to use it. On the fresh fibers, and I think that is our last one. The message here is when we look into wood consumption. So the main species are pine and spruce, and if we look at the origins, we see that Europe continues to be really the main origin of the virgin fibers, so as domestic, but also the chips, so meaning what comes from other woodworking industries, from the sawmills mainly, is mainly coming from Europe, from the Cepi countries, so 85.5%. That is another increase compared to previous years. If we take all of Europe, this number is even more than 90%. So that is also a strong point of the paper industry, is that from the forest to the collection to the machine supply, it's European value chains that create value added for the European society. And with that, I would like to give back to our Director General, Dorian Greenman, for the Q&A session.
I hope you have questions. I don't see any in the chat, but you can also use the raise the hand function, and then we'll give you the floor. If you have any questions. It was all very clear. I see, because there's no questions now. There will be a press release later today that you will have in your inbox if you are one of those journalists that we know. We didn't actually ask this time for registration for joining this seminar, so we don't know exactly who you are, but those who are known to be journalists will see, of course, the Cepi press release, and of course the press release will also be later available on the Cepi website. Now there seems to be something in the chat. So the first question is, how do you see the next months in production? It's coming from Lapapiti. Maybe
okay, well, I don't have a crystal ball, and we know that we are all depending on the news about the COVID, the fourth wave, and these kind of things. But I think we can look at the coming months relatively optimistically. And I mean, as you will see in the press release, the forecast, and there's been some forecast released by the EU Commission very recently, showing that there is a economic GDP, EU GDP to increase by something like 4%, 4.2% this year, and a bit more than 4% next year. So I think quite logically we will benefit from this rebound of the economy. As we have told you, I mean, we are also exporting quite a substantial share of our production. And when you look at export markets, they are also quite dynamic, especially in Asia. So I think all in all, there is good reasons to be optimistic. But of course, we have learned over the last months that we have to remain a bit cautious. But I think the companies, the mills have shown that they can be very resilient, and we have to adjust to the situation.
And of course, this economic rebound will affect the consumption as well in Europe. So that was the second question from as well. So good. Then there was a question. Patrick Mader is asking, the recycling rate was climbing slowly over the past years, but now it jumped. Anything to do with the pandemic? Which one of you would like to answer that?
I can start. So I think the pandemic can be one explanation that we have a continued decrease in the consumption of publication papers, and those are more virgin fiber based, while then the utilization was very strong in packaging, in graphic papers, and I think that explains that the difference between from one year to another is a bit higher than in previous years. But I think that there is a continuous trend to higher utilization rates, and this year was a bit more, and that is probably mostly due to the pandemic, but not only. There's also this structural change.
There's also a question about COVID impact on collection. So there was, of course, differences throughout the year. So first there was some hiccups where the collection nearly stopped, and we had to be pushing very hard for the European Commission and the member states to continue collection so that we get the material back in production. And then secondly, we noticed that with this huge increase of online shopping, some of the municipalities were not prepared for the number of the volume of packaging that people would start accumulating at home. We have, of course, very well functioning system for the retailers and other industrial sources of packaging, but then suddenly it was all on the streets, and some places that was causing also globally some problems. Then there's a question, will this presentation be shared with the participants with the press release?
Yeah, I assume that's the plan, because
Yeah.
there is absolutely no secret here.
There's no secret, so we will be happy to share it. Then there's another question, what is the effect booming of online marketing? For example, we see clear increase in Turkey, but how do you see it in Europe?
Yeah, within Cepi, Turkey is not within a member, so I cannot really comment, of course, for Turkey, but I mean, definitely what we have seen is that e-commerce has boosted the demand for packaging, and especially containerboard. I think we are all been using e-commerce, or I don't want to give any names, but people knocking on your door and providing you with a book or some things you wanted to have without moving out of your house. So this has been, of course, a big trend. It has boosted the containerboard, as I said. I think I had a couple of figures, well, mainly for containerboard in 2020, plus 3%. So you see, I mean, despite the crisis, the economic recession, containerboard production increased in Europe, and it reflects, I think, quite well the consumption. Cartonboard, plus 1%. Okay, it was a special year in a sense, but I think the trend is there. And I see many companies also trying to adjust a product so that they can really meet the expectation from the consumers and this new way of consuming, because it's really accelerating the trend. Yeah.
It's true that we see almost daily some innovations of the packaging area from the sector, and many of them are, of course, being more smart in packaging for the online retail. And then this, like Bernard said, doesn't seem like it's going away. On the contrary, this is a continuation, but acceleration of the trend of changing retail from the shopping in the shops and now moving to online. Then there's a question that you expect more paper facility investments in Europe. How do you see that?
I think, well, once again, we are not there to make forecasts, but what we are seeing is that there is a need first to adjust the production capacities. Well, we know there is nothing new. Graphic paper are not, let's say, dynamic anymore. They are on the decline for structural reasons, and the COVID crisis has also impacted this demand. So we see machines to be converted into packaging, for instance, or specialty paper. There is some closures as well, but all in all, I think investments are there. We have seen quite major ones coming on stream last year, and they will be also this year, especially for containerboard. We also have to invest in energy efficiency, in sustainability, and I mean, this goes together with higher level of production. So when you invest in something for the sustainability. At the same time, you are able also to improve your competitiveness or have a quicker, speeder machine that is much speedier than the previous one. So I think we can also be quite confident that investments will go on.
And earlier this year, we published a report on biorefineries. So we have 139 biorefineries across Europe that are doing this very diverse range of production to many, many value chains, not only paper and packaging related. And then there as well, we have seen many announcements of new investments that are also bigger and more effective. And this is all in all, like Bernard says, is really helping us to improve our sustainability as well, because it's more efficient and more effective and more energy efficient as well. There's a remark that the link to statistics subscription doesn't seem to work, so we will note this. Sorry for that, and then we will then of course make sure that it works as soon as possible. Let me see. There was some thank you for this report and Cepinar. Also from the European Commission, they said that this is very valuable to be shared with the colleagues. I don't see any other further questions. There's also our colleague Francisco Koch has published the link to the statistics order form. So maybe that's a better one than the one that didn't seem to work. And anyhow, we will make sure that all the links work. Any other last questions from anybody? Thank you for all the thank yous. We are very pleased to always announce. I see only people being pleased with the presentation and with the publication. So thank you for your participation in this seminar, and looking forward to the announcement of new statistics in a year's time. Yes, there's one last point that we want to highlight to you is the fact that like every year in November we have the Paper and Beyond, so our annual conference. And again this year we do it totally digitally, so you can be in the comfort of your own office or your own home and then join us in this. And then we can promise you that it's full of very interesting topics and materials. We are telling you then in November how we are shaping the next generation of this industry and how that is helping to shape the next generation of the European Union. So please note the date, 17 to 18 November. And like I said, no traveling required, but just the comfort of your own desk, and then you can follow the conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you.